So what I'm going to talk about is really the methodologies that we apply around designing and developing digital therapeutics within AZ. You might start off thinking that actually it's not that common to have essentially a digital health or digital therapeutics group within a traditional pharmaceutical company. But actually what we see is that in the competitive and continuously changing healthcare environment that we've got, medicines alone are really not enough today and certainly won't be in the future. Our payers are demanding significantly more value for less cost and are certainly looking to discount prices where that's not delivered. We all know that healthcare systems are really buckling under the pressure that they face with more patients, older populations, capped reimbursements, and particularly more comorbid conditions. And the patient's relationship with healthcare is changing. I think that's undeniable. Patients are expecting a more enhanced and informed experience. They're expecting greater support. They're expecting to be treated as individuals rather than as an amorphous mass. And really, what we're looking to do is to help these patients achieve far better outcomes for their health. So the view is that the future lies still with pharmaceutical therapies, but going beyond the pill. That actually what we now see is pharma and really highly skilled technology partners who are devoting significant investment and commitment into developing these solutions of combinations of traditional therapeutics with digital solutions. And we're really looking, as I've said, to the very best of breed in this area are the combination of therapies which are actually delivering improved clinical outcome. I think a lot of the focus that we have is looking at advances of digital health in changing the management of chronic conditions, things like asthma and COPD, both from a chronic and an acute perspective. Also in cardiovascular disease, the same, helping to manage and support patients in their self-management, but also looking to predict future events. And particularly and increasingly actually in the area of oncology, where I don't really like the word, but increasing survivorship. I like the fact that a lot more people are living post-cancer. I just find survivorship a bit of a strange term actually. And so do a lot of patients. But actually helping those patients to manage what is becoming increasingly complex environment with which medicines to be using, in what combinations, and how to manage side effects in cancer. And then helping patients to manage post-treatment to move back to a new normal life. So as a group, we really focus on being able to deliver digital therapeutics, which we define as a combination of drug delivery devices, medical sensors, particularly behavioural interventions, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, but also critically medical device software. Some of you who know me in the audience will know I get very agitated about the huge number of software applications that are out there, which are unvalidated, have a lack of evidence, and are generally creating confusion for patients and healthcare professionals around how to actually use those particular solutions. And so I'm very focused on those kind of proof points. We then integrate those solutions with our medicines to really help patients and physicians to manage their disease. And we're looking to do really two things and then derive an additional benefit. So the first is optimizing medication use. There's twofold challenges there. I'm going to talk about this more in a few minutes, but adherence to any therapy is generally extremely poor. And helping patients to be more adherent to therapy has a huge impact on clinical outcome. It's also an incredibly difficult thing to do. Patients also are under-supported in the correct use of their medication. So actually helping patients through digital solutions to optimize their use of medications, particularly when we've got drug delivery devices. To actually understand someone well enough to help them with their adherence and to help them to manage their medication, not only are we starting to, just through the better use of medication, optimize clinical outcomes, but you understand and you're collecting such rich data for individuals that actually the least valuable thing in many ways is helping them to take their medication as prescribed. You've got a wealth of data that can help those patients to support themselves with better self-management, but also provide data sets that didn't exist even last year to help patient and HCP interactions, to provide the right data to healthcare professionals at the right time, which can enrich the decision-making process. And that provides us and other stakeholders with optimized data collection that we're able to actually understand the full context of a patient's experience, both in the clinical development phase and in generating real-world evidence. So allowing the pharmaceutical company to, in our case AZ, to accelerate drug development and to differentiate commercial products. What it's also delivering is better outcomes for patients and lower total healthcare cost. All sounds really, really easy, but actually I like to pretend it's not, at least, because if it was really easy, somebody'd fire me and hire somebody far cheaper. But I think what we're really looking at doing is developing software as a medical device and how we do that in practice. And it's like the development of any other product. It's about insight-driven functionality, delivering market-leading solutions. The first step being actually to understand what's happening in current clinical practice, determining which processes to replicate, actually which processes to replace, and where the breaks in care are that you can actually support. One of the critical steps in that phase is actually to be asking healthcare professionals, what evidence would you need to actually implement this? Because I think people are bored with the kind of, I've got an app for that type approach. Physicians are looking for evidence, and particularly payers are looking for evidence that would actually support implementation of a solution. When we've got that kind of map, we then look at what the right technology solutions are. It's relatively rare that we actually invest in a technology-led solution, with technology innovation being the point of friction that starts a program. It's much more that we're starting from a clinical unmet need. And then the absolute critical but often forgotten step of ensuring that we engage with patients during the design and continually during the development. So this is going beyond the kind of patient panel where you're saying, do you prefer purple or red for that? It's actually really talking to patients and understanding how they want to interface with this kind of solution, what compromises and trade-offs they're comfortable with to actually see these solutions developed. And then we launch a first version, and what we've found throughout everything we've done is that first version needs significant change when it's actually gone beyond that patient panel stage out into hundreds and thousands of patients. But here again is where digital can provide so many strong tools. You don't need to do market research with patients in the way that you did or with consumers in the way that you did traditionally. You've got real-time data feeds about what screens people are actually using, what buttons they're pressing, what they're finding useful, what they're not. And if you're really smart about this, you've got really ways of collecting feedback in real time from users about what they like and what they don't. But actually the biggest thing that is required is behavior change to drive and power digital therapeutics. There's been quite a lot of talks and presentations about the value of data, and that's undeniable. These programs are fed by data from connected drug delivery devices, smart medication packs, all of that kind of thing, to actually give you a first passive insight into the patient's behavior. These technologies are great because they actually require very little of the individual as a user of a medication. You either take your medication or you don't, and the information is being passively recorded. We can then collect additional information through medical sensors about the impact of the disease on the patient on a particular day and the impact the medicine is having both on the disease and on the individual. We supplement that with patient-reported outcomes. Patient-reported outcomes traditionally are the kind of horrible clinical tools that everybody hates to fill in and nobody does. But actually, again, with digital solutions, you can create patient-reported outcome experiences where patients not only fill these programs in, but actually get value back immediately from providing that information because they can see how they're doing, they're giving immediate feedback. And then there's also sort of Internet of Things and environmental data, so contextual information that helps support the information you're getting from the sensors. So as an example, if you've got an asthma patient living in the middle of Beijing and an asthma patient living out in I don't know, the kind of the Midwest of the US, the environmental pollution in those two settings is entirely different. The impact of the disease on the individual, the impact of the medication on the individual will be different. And so that allows that to be set into context. What we're trying to do, kind of jumping to the other side of the slide, is to then deliver insight or instruction to a patient or a healthcare professional, which results in an action. But actually, I think the thing that's been missed quite often is that for any action to actually any information or instruction to result in an action, we're all human. That instruction has to concur with our beliefs or change our beliefs. And if it doesn't, it won't resonate, it won't deliver any action. That's why generally education in healthcare has either very limited or very short-term effects, if it has any effect at all, because it doesn't understand the actual individual drivers for that patient, the things that they're concerned about with the medication, what their goals are. And unless you understand those things, there's no way of communicating in a way that will drive action. And I'm going to take one example, actually the simplest of a whole set of complex interventions that we deliver, medication adherence. So I think the first proper report into medication adherence was a WHO report in, I think, 1983. And sadly, since that point, industry has spent probably somewhere, certainly in the tens of billions of dollars, fixing adherence, with absolutely no success. If you compare the WHO report from 1983 with the Cochrane review in, I think, 2016, or it might have been 2015, bluntly, there's been absolutely no return on all of that investment. And there's a set of reasons for that. It's not that the problem's gone away. We've got average patient adherence to medication well under 50%. We've got a multitude of reports that talk about how much money it costs pharma and how many people die every year because of medication non-adherence, and I've just picked a couple of the numbers, the overall cost to healthcare. So it's not actually because there's not a problem to solve. There's a wealth of solutions, but actually, out of somewhere around 25,000 solutions that we reviewed, there was actually only just under 170 that actually got any evidence of impact, either positive or negative. Most of the solutions actually last, if they're pharma-driven, as long as the brand manager's in that job before they move to a different job. So the longevity of the solutions is almost nil. So you finish up with a situation where actually a tiny number of the interventions have actually got any evidence. Of those interventions, about 50% work and 50% don't. But at the point you start to really understand those solutions and interrogate whether they're actually using behavior change techniques at the center of the intervention, you get to a probability of success of closer to 80%. That now starts to become a valuable intervention with a decent probability of success. And just for a minute, for kind of a plug for the way we work, in the last 2 years, we deliver a whole range of different interventions, looking at hospitalization rates, looking at overall healthcare utilization costs. But in 4 programs that were really focused on adherence interventions, we actually managed to get a 100% success rate. We're at a point where certainly one of the technologies that we're using, there was a nice technology advisory in January this year, which very clearly stated that intervention was better than current standard of care. They're all powered by behavior change. And what's the reason? It's because actually, traditional medication adherence type programs will send reminders to everybody. It's great, we can use SMS, we can use in-app messaging for that, it'll be fantastic. Doesn't work because you all need different things from that solution. What we're able to do with a two-way communication with the technology is actually drive personalization, interventions that are targeted to you as an individual based on your specific needs. Understanding your perceptions about the medication, about the condition, dealing with your perceptual barriers, addressing those barriers. Understanding and recognizing that those barriers are going to change. If you look at a patient with COPD, the day after they leave hospital, having felt like they're drowning alive, up to the point where they've had treatment, their view and their perception of what their medication is going to do for them is very, very different to 6 months later when they've not had another exacerbation. So thinking that this is a one-time solution is also a really, really dumb thing. Also dealing with practical barriers. Where is your medication today? What happens if you're somebody with exercise-induced asthma who's left their inhaler on the table at home as they've gone off to play football on a Saturday morning? Wouldn't it be nice to have a system, and obviously it's blindingly easy to do, that triggers an alert to that person to say, hey, it's Saturday morning, I know you always run around like crazy and you always take 6 or 8 puffs on your salbutamol. Maybe you better turn around and pick that inhaler up because we know you've not got one with you. And so you can address those individual practicalities to be delivering the right information in the right situation and delivered in the right way. So it's all dead simple, isn't it? This is my last slide. We're all here because we truly believe that digital can drive a change in healthcare. There's significant problems in design and development of these solutions. Looking at all other solutions, average usage time for people who actually engage with them might be 3 or 4 months. Actually, a massive percentage of people who are offered the programs refuse them, and an equally large percentage agree to take them when the physician offers them, but actually don't start to interact at all. That's kind of poor development in terms of the overall design, the overall development, the overall implementation. Defining the benefit's a massive problem. There isn't a benefit that works for any one individual in the cycle. It has to work for everybody together. The payer needs to see evidence that this works, that it's going to reduce overall cost of care. Doctors' time is precious. Doctors can see that these kinds of solutions could actually increase their workload, not decrease their workload. And so you need to be able to define the benefit for the doctor, and that's critical because patients actually only engage in these solutions long term if it results in a change in their relationship with their physician and that they can see a positive benefit. Scale is also a massive issue. We can probably all say that we've conducted a load of pilots and pilots have been successful, and that's great, but how do you move from a point of, well, we did it with 50 patients in one country and this is what we saw, to this is actually integrated fully in every pack of medicine that leaves our factory. There's a big step there. Compliance. There are challenges always about what pharma are allowed to say, what pharma's relationship can be with patients. That's another reason why we also need to work in partnership. This won't be about any one company owning all of this space. And actually, medical device regulation is a double-edged sword. I'm actually strongly of the view that there's a lack of regulation in this space that's driving the fact that there's somewhere around 300,000 healthcare apps out there, and somewhere around 33 of them make up 50% of the downloads. The other 300 and whatever thousand are there creating a lot of confusion, and I know there'll be a presentation from Orca later which hopefully will talk about some of the work around quality there, but I think medical device regulation should also fit within that scope. All of these challenges are absolutely worth addressing because the goal is how we improve patient lives, and I'll leave you with one thing that's not on a slide, but go away and have a look at a company called Cevan Innovations who've developed a program for patients with lung cancer. Really, really simple program. It collects symptoms on a weekly basis from those patients. They've demonstrated that collection of those symptoms is as accurate as CT scanning, but it's weekly. Cancer doesn't progress at the point that you turn up in the clinic and you have a scan. Cancer progresses when cancer progresses. and that app is picking up that progression at the point it's happening. They demonstrated a 7-month overall survival benefit over current standard of care. So to the conversation earlier about, oh, you guys are just developing gadgets, that's the one to turn around and say to people, no, we're not, we're saving people's lives, and that's why it's worth addressing all of these challenges. So thank you very much, everyone.